100%. No one's ever turned down a meeting. That's the power of this guy. He calls ahead and says, hey, you gotta meet my friend Mike. I don't know, you don't even need to know what it's about. Just trust me, it's a good message. So Jerry obviously grew up in Illinois, Chicago. He's going to tell us some of those stories. Big integral part of the Chicago Bulls. People don't realize that. The Suns, right here in town. The Coyotes, people don't realize that. Diamondbacks brought a championship here. 4 great kids, wife Joan, and I want to bring my friend Jerry up. We're going to do an interview, and then we'll get this podium off here. So don't worry, we're going to remove this so you guys can see. So Jerry, if you don't mind coming up and taking a seat right here, everybody give Jerry Colangelo a hand, please. All right, Jerry, you've never done these before, have you?
That's better. That's better.
All right, all right. So, everyone wants to hear, obviously, about your involvement with AOC and how you got involved with it, but I want to start off a little bit back in time, if you don't mind. Illinois, Chicago, the tough upbringing you had, and how that kind of shaped who you are today. If you don't mind telling us that story first.
Well, first of all, the reason I'm involved at all, excuse me, is because of Dave Hanna. And then Eric is the chip off the old block, that's for sure. But Dave and I go back many, many years. He was the guy who started Athletes in Action, another organization I'm pretty involved in. In fact, I was in Indianapolis at the All-Star Weekend last weekend for breakfast. We had 750 people there, put on by Athletes in Action, and it was a great morning just to see the kind of response. It was also very cold and very snowy, and I was anxious to get back. So I didn't stay for a lot of the NBA events. Also some Hall of Fame business, because I'm chairman of the Basketball Hall of Fame, and we're submitting 14 names for consideration, and now they need to get the required votes to be inducted. So that's just a recent update, but going way back, Chicago. Grew up in the South Side, Italian neighborhood. Only house I ever lived in was a home that my grandfather, an immigrant, built out of the remnants of a couple of railroad boxcars and some extra lumber. And it was very humble kind of a beginning. My grandfather would wake me up in the morning by hitting the water pipes, which were exposed. They weren't in the walls. He did with the spoon, he did the pipes. And I'd be downstairs. I had a little place to sleep upstairs. And before I went out to the elements and delivered newspapers, I had some hot coffee. And but I wouldn't trade all of that for all the money in the world, because it's there that I got my basic stuff about who I am. It was about faith, it was about family, it was about hard work, it was a lunch bucket community. I saw everybody go with a lunch bucket and show up that night for dinner, start over the next day. I just happened to be blessed with a little bit of ability, which led to some offers for education to play basketball and baseball. And without that, I would not have gone to school because there wasn't any money. I was the first person in our large family to go to school. What I left with, in terms of the beginning, is that I had a lot of people to thank for helping me, opening the doors for me. And I was willing to put in the work to make the most of it. And I carried that with me. I was part of the startup of the Chicago Bulls franchise when I was 25. I was recruited to come to Phoenix. I took the job here, at the time the youngest GM in all of professional sports, and we didn't have very much. I came here with $300 in my pocket, 9 suitcases, 3 kids, 2, 4, and 6, and we just started from scratch. It was a great opportunity. I saw a blank canvas when I saw Phoenix for the first time. And it was the possibility of doing your own portrait, very simply. That's the way I looked at it. And so, through a lot of people who surrounded me and supported me here, I was able to get a lot of things done. But I never forgot where I came from. I never forgot what got me here. And so I started to try to instill that in our kids. 4 kids, 10 grandkids, 6 great-grandkids. And it all starts there. I've been a firm believer the breakup of the family unit has been the real issue and the real problem in this country. You know, back growing up in the late 40s and 50s, early 50s, no one talked about divorce. Everyone was committed for life in terms of marriage. And so young people had that to look to or look up to in terms of stability. It doesn't exist today. And so my heart has always been about helping those who can't help themselves. In my first interview in 1968, when I came here, I said, this community owes us nothing. It's up to us to earn the respect and support of the community by how we conduct ourselves, not only on the court, but in the community. What are we going to do to make it a better place in which to live? And that was what I believed in from day one and still do today. So we all have some capacity, some of us more than others, to make a difference, to put your resources where it can do the most good. And so over the years with many organizations, many and most of which were with the youth, because I've always looked at the youth as they're the future. They're the future leaders. These are the people who need the help, put them in the right direction, give them a sound foundation, and ambassadors of compassion. When you heard the presentation here just a few minutes ago, it puts it all in perspective. And so for the academic people here, I would hope you leave thinking you want all of the students to see this, to hear it, to experience it. The business people who are here, there's a lot of pulls, there's no doubt about it. But this is an organization in doing what is planned to be done here in the state of Arizona, in Phoenix. It's a pretty good thing to put your money and resources into to help make it happen. I'm committed to it. So that's something for you all to think about. Not too long. I'm an instinctive person. If somebody pitched me like that, I would say, I'm in. That's what I would do. Not, well, I'm going to go home and think about it. Funny story, because I see one of my good friends of Young Life, Marty Caldwell, here. Young Life is a non-denominational Christian organization for, was at one time high school kids, now it's college kids, etc. Marty had a dream. Someone mentioned dreams earlier, I think Eric, you did. He wanted to build a camp, a new Young Life camp in Williams, Arizona. And I've known Marty forever, and he came to me and my partner at the time, David Eaton, and said, here's what I'd like to do. And I said, Marty, how are we going to raise that kind of money? What's the budget? And of course, he was way off on the budget because it grew and it grew and it grew. But one way Young Life raises money, it always has been this way, kind of a soft sell approach. You know, people would make a pitch at a dinner and say there's a card on the table, fill out the card. If you're moved to want to do something, we'll get back to you, blah, blah, blah. So now he wanted me to help raise money. Here's where I made the big change, and he was sweating out in the audience when I said, when I get up there, I'm asking for the order, because I have him here right now. So it's not going home and pray about it before you determine what you're going to do. You commit, and then you pray about how you're going to meet it. A little bit of a change up on words, but I think it's a good way to get things done sometime. My partner, Mike Ingram, who's at the same table, is one of the great fundraisers that I've ever met. When he gets behind something, it just happens. It's as simple as that. So we find ourselves in the same row, in the same seats, doing the same thing, trying to do what's right and make our community a better place in which to live and help as many people as we can. That's I'm trying to cover a lot of stuff so you don't have to ask questions.
You've already checked all the boxes. The ask at the very end, those envelopes, you can go ahead and check that off. That's right there on the table. Thanks for that, Jerry, the closer. I do have some questions that I did an open poll to some of my friends. Said, well, what do you want to ask Jerry? You had him like this. And you got to talk a little bit about the sports here in town. How'd that come to be? We know you brought us to Phoenix now in the dates. I'm following your timeline here. So Suns and D-backs. Tell us a little bit how that happened.
Well, I was an athlete back in the Midwest, had some name identity as a result, and I met someone who had a dream after college. I was playing semi-pro ball, $100 a game, and that was big money back then in the early 60s. And had a job, raising a family, not doing very well in that area. My wife was left to take care of that responsibility. But I met someone who had a dream, and that was to bring pro basketball to Chicago, because Chicago was, boy, there were only 9 teams in the NBA at the time. And I called him. I said, Mr. Klein, this is Jerry Colangelo. Oh, I remember you. You played at Illinois. Bingo, it was that connectivity. By the end of the day, he offered me a job at twice the amount of money I had ever seen, because I had been working for 3 years. And for 6 months, we were on a trip to call on 3 of his accounts in Cincinnati, Columbus, and Louisville. And we went by car. And on Route 41, and anyone from Indiana here at all? You know where Route 41 is? Going north and south? He had a convertible, and I remember being on 41, and he says, I want to bring pro basketball to Chicago. And so for the next 6 months, we hustled trying to make that happen. And we did. So we were the first expansion team of the modern era. By the way, the payroll for 12 players was $180,000 in 1966. Ticket prices were $2, $3, $4. I was a young guy in what was becoming very quickly a growth industry. So the next year, Seattle and San Diego were added, and I was being recruited. And I said, no, I'm a Chicago guy. I'm happy where I am, I'm not interested. I thought Seattle had Conestoga wagons and dirt roads. I'd never been there. The following year, so I passed on those opportunities. The following year, they added Milwaukee and Phoenix. So one day I left Chicago, it was 20 below zero at O'Hare. Landed at Terminal 1, which doesn't exist today. But the luggage used to be delivered outside. I don't know if any of you can remember back in the old days. And it was 70-some degrees, and I smelled orange blossoms for the first time. So during the day, I'm being pushed pretty hard to take the job. And I was, you know, a little bit street educated too. That helps. That's an element that's, I think, important. You can't learn it all by the book. You got to be out there in the trenches and get bruised up a little bit, get dirtied up a little bit. And I said, look, I'll get back to you in a couple of days. In the meantime, I negotiated a deal if I chose to take it. And then I excused myself and I said, look, before I excused myself, I may stay in Chicago, I may go to Milwaukee, but I'll get back to you in a few days. I got to a phone at the hotel. This is before cell phones, back in the 60s. And I called my wife and I said, pack your bags, babe, it's Phoenix. 2 weeks later, we were here with the 3 little ones and the 9 suitcases and never looked back. So that's how I got here.
It's great. I love it. Now, we have to talk a little bit about, I watched the Redeem Team, by the way. I rewatched it. That's a documentary on ESPN, right? So if you haven't watched it, I think you go on Netflix. It's about an hour and a half, and it talks about Olympic basketball. So you're talking about this gentleman assembling not only to the likes of Coach K, Krzyzewski from Duke, assembling these players, LeBron, Kobe Bryant, some of these folks. You've been around these people like day in, day out. And you brought these people to Vegas for months or weeks on end to bring them together. I'm curious to hear a little bit of share on what you got out of that. You're working with some big personalities, leaders, and how you can glean that knowledge into us and say, what do you get out of that? How do you do that?
Well, first of all, 2004, the USA team finished 3rd in the Olympics in Greece. And it wasn't as much about finishing 3rd, it was how they looked, how they acted, and it was not a very nice scene. 2004 was a big year in my life because a few things happened. I made a decision to sell the Suns because although I started them in '68, I put a group together to buy them in '87 for $44.5 million, and I didn't have any money at the time. But I figured out a way, and this is for all the young people. You don't have to necessarily be given something or expect to get it like an expectation. You figure out how to make it happen. And that's what I was able to do. But I had support in the community because I had paid my dues in the community. So when I was looking for some partners in a banking situation, it happened. So I bought at 44.5 and in 2004 sold for over 400 million. So my partners were very happy. They got a very good return on their small investments. I tell you that story because in '04 I sold the Suns. I stepped down from the Diamondbacks. It's a long story. I had prostate cancer. Didn't know how that was going to turn out. And I remember when I was told that was the case, I said, you know, why not me? I'm no different than anyone else. It wasn't woe is me. It is what it is. So I got through that. I was home recuperating. I got a call from the commissioner. He says, would you take over USA basketball and do the whole thing? And again, to my point about not hesitating, I said, sure, I'll do it, but I have 2 conditions. He said, what are they? Full autonomy. I'll pick the coaches, I'll pick the players. He said, done. What's number 2? I said, I don't want to hear about a budget. He didn't like that one. And he's ranting and raving a little bit. And I said, David, are you finished? He's now deceased, David Stern. Yes. I said, well, it's still number 2. But don't worry about it, because I'll raise all the money. And that's exactly what happened. We quadrupled the needed revenues in a period of months, and we were off. At the time, the basketball world community had lost respect for USA basketball. We had to reinvent the wheel. We had to show respect in order to earn respect. So it was reinventing the whole thing. I found the right partner in Coach K. Somebody stopped me today, General Counsel Duke, there he is. And we were meant to be together. I had met him when he was an assistant coach at Indiana because Bobby Knight was a contemporary of mine. We played against each other for 3 years. He at Ohio State, me at Illinois. We were together in basketball for a number of years. But Coach K was my guy. It took one meeting, although we knew each other a little bit, we shared the same everything about what needed to be done and how we were going to do it. And so that was the beginning. '08 was the first Olympics, about the Redeem team. We were in Beijing. There's so many stories I have about that first experience in the Olympics with the presidents, and even this is a funny story. At halftime of the game against China, the most watched game ever in the history of sports. Why? Because everybody in China was watching the game, and there's a lot of them, trust me. So at halftime of that game, I'm sitting there with two presidents, Henry Kissinger, who passed away, this past year? It was really interesting. I'm going to my seat, and there's somebody slumped over asleep. It was Kissinger. That's how interested he was in what was happening. But at halftime, I had to get back to the court because I was doing a kind of a major interview on World TV. And I was concerned about security, which had broken down, and I knew I could get down. The question is, how do I get back? And I'd been in buildings all over the world and could walk my way around. So I come back after the interview and I'm getting close to where I wanted to be, and I get stopped by security. I had every credential you can imagine, but they wouldn't let me through. And just then, the president of China was walking to the men's room, and he was in the same row with me. And I looked at him, I said, would you tell these guys I need to get back to my seat? And he said something in Chinese, I guess. And the seat parted, and I went back to my seat. That's a nice memory. Beijing. After we won, when the moment took place where the medals are being awarded, the Star-Spangled Banner is being played, the flag is lifted, here's what went through my mind. Very few people have the opportunity to have that opportunity, number one. To have a vision, to have a plan, and see it fully executed. And that all happened. So it was a big moment for me.
If you watch the documentary, you see you were involved with a few more gold medals that happened after that. But what was interesting to me is some of and you're interviewed in the movie a few times, if you guys watch it, is some of the lessons. And you had Coach K come in with the military at one point.
Oh yeah.
And then share with the athletes. You have to imagine you're LeBron James in there, and you got the military coming in, teaching these guys principles. You guys really drove on the life lessons that way.
Absolutely, absolutely. We had meetings every day with our team. It was practice, but meetings every day, talking about everything in life and how it all comes together. And when we had the presence of military people, I remember one blinded, in Iraq, and he was listening to the game, listening to everything that was going on, practice games. And the wet eyes, the things that happen, you want to build a team, let them share in all the emotional things that take place. And so it was great. The whole situation was great. I remember Kobe, who demonstrated he wanted a chance to play. And I met with each player one-on-one, eyeball to eyeball, and said, I'll paraphrase. I'm going to find 12 players who are going to do everything they're told to do. So if you want to be part of this, you're going to have to do A, B, C, and D. And if any one of these things bothers you and you can't do it, you're out. Because I'll find 12. Well, as soon as a couple of them said yes immediately, word spread among the players. I remember LeBron, and I had my issues with him along the way. But early on, we had a 9 o'clock appointment at a hotel in Chicago. 9 o'clock. I'm in the lobby, and at 9 o'clock, the door opened in terms of the elevator, and he walked out exactly at 9 o'clock. And I started giving him a little, he says, I'm in. It's as simple as that. So, Kobe had scored 80, remember when he scored, how many was it, 81 or 83 in a game? 81? Yeah, 81. Well, a couple days later, they're coming to Phoenix to play the Suns. So Kobe comes up to my office and he was excited about wanting to talk about the Olympic team. So I'm going to put him on a little bit. And I decided, I said, Kobe, after he just scored 81, right? And his skills were pretty good offensively, like a ton of points. I said, what if I said to you, I want you to have a different role on this team? He said, well, what do you mean? He said, I want you to be a distributor, not a scorer. Putting him on. And he says to me, I'll do whatever you want me to do. Good memories.
Yeah, that was really special in the documentary the tribute to Kobe. So we're going to wrap up. I leave some parting thoughts. So the question is some takeaways, words of wisdom from Jerry. You see, you've got educators, you've got high school kids in here, you got people in nonprofits. Words of wisdom. You know what we're trying to do here in Arizona. You're proud of everything that we've built and touched, and I know this is no different. But any parting words for us here, Jerry?
Specifically to the youth, my encouragement is you don't ever quit. That's not a new comment, but you don't ever quit, regardless of what the odds are. And if somebody creates a situation where you're blocked, find a new path. You may have to step out on a plank, and you may fall. Just get up, be the last one standing. Don't ever be afraid to make a mistake. As I can tell you in my life, I learned so much more from mistakes than I did wins. For sure. And remember, don't ever be intimidated by anyone who comes from the other side of the tracks, who it appears has so much more than you do. I used to think that when I was a kid, because I was in that situation. Like, how do I get over there? Is that ever going to happen for me? Well, then you're kind of geared toward doing things the right way, and you go for it. So, the other couple of things I want to say is life is relational. Learn how to look people in the eye, shake hands, put the iPads and phones away most of the time, okay? When I speak over at GCU that I'm very involved in, and I see kids in the classroom not paying attention when I'm in there, I'll say very simply, put your phone down, show some respect. If I'm going to take my time to come in here and visit with you, that's what you need to do. Well, today, that's a no-no, I guess. There's so many things you can't do today. In my neighborhood as a kid, if you got out of line, if someone in your family didn't give you a whack, the neighbor would. And that was okay. You learn to do things the right way. Discipline is important. That's a few things.
Right. So we'll go ahead and we'll wrap up. I just want to say thanks so much. I want to just share something with you as a group. I've been with Jerry now with these meetings, and it blows my mind. What I learned from him while watching and observing, I'm a journal guy, some of you guys know this, I always say what's written is real. I'll sit in his office, and and I'm feverishly taking notes on everything he says, who he names people I don't even know, I just write stuff down. And he'll see me not writing, he goes, you write this down? I got it. And he goes, all right, Jennifer, who's Jennifer Grace? Jennifer here, by the way, she's here somewhere. Jennifer Grace, great assistant for many years. He's like, you know Jennifer's number, right? It's 48032. I'm like, holy moly, this guy literally is recalling phone numbers off the top of his head. But the one thing that I would say that I've learned a lot from you is the way you're present with people. You're present in those meetings when you're just watching you with the media earlier, the way you're in this room with 100 people, you feel like he's just sitting here with you. And that's something I want to say thank you so much for me to my wife Monica, who says hi, by the way, she's on the bench, she can't be here today, and the things I tell my kids. So I hope that we all get that, you young men over there, the things they shared. So I just want to say thank you so much. I'll let you say stage right, unless you have any parting thoughts.
I just want to say one more thing. For all the people here, I'd love to see everyone participate as best you can, depending on your capacity, your availability, your resources, what you can do in the schools within the restrictions that you have. But if everyone jumps in, this thing will happen. And I think what you saw on the screen is that the results are there. So making a difference, how do you make a difference in life? By putting some effort into making a difference in life. And this is a good one. So I encourage all of you.
All right, everybody, Jerry Colangelo.